Okay, start. Okay, we are here. We have started. All right, we got some people here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm gonna give it a couple minutes and see who else pops on here. So yeah, exciting to see people. I am going to share. So boom, we're gonna go into that little presentation. Whoops, there you go. Oh boy, I there you go. You get a little preview of everything. Da, 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 da. Awesome. All right. So as we get started here, I just wanted to let you know a few things. So with the chat, the chat is man, there's a helicopter. I don't know if you all can hear that. There's a helicopter like right. It's not ideal timing. So there's a chat. You can put stuff in the chat. I can do that as well. Or maybe it's just for me, but I'll share stuff with you throughout, links to various things. Um, and you can ask questions. So there's a place where you can ask questions. Um, there's a Q&A that I will be doing at the end. So I'm gonna try to save a good amount of time for the Q&A because that was really popular last time. So feel free in there should be a place where you can input questions and I can answer them for you. Okay. Additionally, at the end or towards the end, we're going to talk about like more specifically how you can program for the off season after I get through some of the really important principles. Okay. And yeah, so let's get going here. We have some more people popping on. This is great. I'm Brian. If you don't know me already, I am an ultimate athlete. I train ultimate athletes. I've trained a lot of other athletes as well. The reason I have these pictures are here, there's a specific reason. So this one is me jumping for a disc that I threw to myself, warming up for US Open in 2024. And this is me at Masters Nationals this past year, actually same fields in Aurora. Getting a little D there, my right hand. So the type of training that I'm going to talk to you about is something, it's a different paradigm for people. It's a paradigm shift that a lot of people are resistant to. But I can promise you it works. And it's not just for me, but I find that sharing my story does is powerful for people. So I did want to talk a little bit about the fact that I'm 38 years old. Um, and for me personally, this has worked extraordinarily well to the point that I'm more reliable. I feel better. I have more fun playing now at 38 than I did when I was 20, 22, 25, etc. And it's the training. So I continuously kind of move the goalposts in terms of like what I expect for myself. In 2024, I played, Winter League, Summer League here in Philly, and then I picked up with a team at US Open, played almost 60 points against some of the best competition in the world, and I felt incredible. But I thought, I played one big tournament. This training works really well for me. It works really well for the people I work with, but maybe there's limitations because it's not a full season. This year, I played at Masters. I played for a club team that finished fourth in the region. I played 7 tournaments. This is also the year my wife had a baby, and the first half of the season, I barely got any sleep. So, personally, this stuff has kept me going to a greater degree than I ever thought possible. And it has worked really well for my students, my clients. I'm going to bring this to you. I'm very excited and I want to help you get the most out of your time and energy. So let's get going. So this is a little bit more about me. I got a degree in kinesiology. Don't worry, I'll get through this stuff really quick. Um, but I just want you to understand a couple things in context. I got a degree in kinesiology from Penn State. I've done 20,000 plus training sessions in person, so that doesn't even count any of the online stuff I've done. I've been playing Ultimate for a long time, since my senior year of high school, so 20-ish years. Though I've spent about as much time on the sidelines as I have playing because of injuries. So I know from experience training and from experience playing, from experience training ultimate athletes and all kinds of other people, what works for most people. And I think one of the challenges and one of the reasons I try to educate so much is that there's so much misinformation out there. And there are a lot of people sharing what works for them short term and presenting it as if this works for everyone all the time. And that's just not the case. So, what I'm sharing with you is the stuff that I have found and a lot of my colleagues have found works for all people all the time. We just have to adjust the principles. So, I'm going to share principles with you that are really powerful. So, more context. Um, I hurt stuff. This is my throwing shoulder. It's a mirror, so that's my left shoulder. Knees in college, Achilles in college, hamstrings. This was like the 2014 season. Lots of concussions. I've not been lucky. I'm not genetically gifted. I have been in chronic pain off and on since I was like 16, and it forced me to learn more. It forced me to look outside of some of the conventional wisdom. I still use fundamental principles that are the same, but it's just the way we apply them are very different. Okay, so let's get going into this. Some of you, if you've been in any of my other webinars, you may have seen this before. The reason I'm here, ultimate training culture needs to change. Okay, so I want to acknowledge a few things. Um, First, that ultimate demands are different than other sports. There's a lot of volume at high intensities. It's a nasty mix that will almost inevitably cause some form of pain and injuries, and we want to mitigate that as well as possible. Um, another big thing I want to I have some notes here so I don't forget stuff. Um, that I want to acknowledge is that a lot of people playing, this is not your full-time job, right? Like you might have a job, you might have school, you have time and energy taken up by other parts of your life while playing Ultimate. And when that happens, I can understand how people would think, well, the mobility training is kind of a waste of time. I don't think I have time for that. And I understand that, but I am here to change your mind. And not because I am like a lobbyist for big mobility, but because this is the stuff that works. And I want to help you direct your time and energy into stuff that is going to be most effective for you. All right. So we're going to get into this. If you've read through some of these, some of it might be familiar. Please don't take this as a personal attack. All of this was me at some point. This is the big one. Like social media is just perpetuating a lot of stuff that is not true, and unfortunately, makes people believe in quick fixes, or just kind of being reactive to things, or like one exercise, one thing is going to help when um, that's not true. So we, rather than band-aids, we want long-term sustainable stuff. I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay. Um, and the like a big theme of this is that prioritizing mobility makes our other training and skill work more efficient and more effective. Okay. And we're going to talk about other types of training as well. So we're going to go through what mobility is, why it's so important. We're going to talk about how we can improve mobility. And we're going to talk about how we can create and structure an off-season training plan, as well as a bunch of other things mixed in. You see Mr. Mistake up here. He's going to pop up here and there. So I'm going to sprinkle in different mistakes that players make, that are very common, and what we can do about that. Okay. And so, like I believe I talked about, so maybe I didn't. At the very end, or towards the end, I'm going to talk about like how we can create this off-season plan. Then I'm going to provide, I have some like fun kind of bonuses and free stuff I want to give you. So that's going to come towards the end. And at the very end, we're doing a Q&A, which I'm going to try to leave a lot of time for that. Okay, sweet. So let's get into it. When it comes to the training and effective training, adaptation is really important. This is like the most important concept. Um, and it's going to guide everything else. So adaptation takes time, patience, and consistent effort. And you see braces here. You might wonder what that is talking about, and I will tell you. So, um, this is a this is no matter what we're trying to do in the body, time and consistent effort is going to be key. Okay, so if you think about like what is the change we are trying to make with our training, it depends on what kind of training, right? But think about our teeth. If you want to align your teeth and uh, you might want it to happen quickly. It's not going to. If you want to realign your teeth, the best way to do it that we know how is using some form of braces or Invisalign or some kind of braces, which applies a consistent force all day, all night for weeks, months, and sometimes years, right? It's not a ton of force, but it's very, very consistent. This requires time, this requires patience, this requires consistent effort. So we use effort, we use force to create adaptation in our body. So with our teeth, there's progression, right? You might get your braces tightened or adjusted or something like that. So we also are going to need progression, which I will talk about. If you are not patient enough, maybe you're looking for a quick fix, we have other options, right? You could get punched in the face. You could have someone punch you in the face, you could punch them at the same time. That's quicker, right? But we can't control the outcome as well. It's not a sustainable or healthy strategy. So I'm looking at things that work for most people that are sustainable and healthy, right? So we want a strategy that we know works, but it's going to take time. And I think like people want something that works quick and is easy, and that's just not it's not how things work. That's not how our body works if we want to create a significant change. It doesn't mean you need to blow up your life and commit it to one specific thing. It just means you need to direct your effort and force in a specific direction for a while. Okay? Pliers are another option. I don't recommend it, but for those of us who have had braces, um, those aren't super fun, but I bet pliers are less fun. So let's get into the next one. So related to adaptation, when we are not patient and not consistent, a lot of times things like pain and injuries can become cyclical and progressively worse. So here's Mr. Mistake again. This is a big issue, a big point. Some of you have heard me talk about this before. Here's a bridge. When we apply a significant stress on this bridge and the bridge cannot handle the stress, there's going to be a breakdown. So let's say there's always 100 people crossing the bridge. Okay, so any given moment, there are about 100 people that can fit on the bridge. And it deals with that stress every day. And the bridge starts to break down. That stress of 100 people is too much for the bridge to handle. It's greater than the bridge's strength or resilience. So, what if that happened and we see cracks forming in the foundation and we're like, okay, everyone off the bridge, let the bridge rest for 2 weeks? Um, well, what's going to happen is then after 2 weeks, when we let people back on the bridge, it's going to deal with the same stress, even though it has the same strength, or it has less strength because it broke down a little bit. So the problem there is that we need to actively repair to improve the area that was damaged. But then we also need to build it back stronger because it's going to handle the same stress that broke it down in the first place. So we need it to be stronger than it was before. And this is what happens often with people with ultimate is that they will have an injury from the stress of ultimate. And I'm not talking about like a traumatic, like someone jumped into your leg type of injury, but like, you land and you hurt something, or you sprint and you pull something, or it's the third game, but you're going to play 3 games again. So like they will rest for 2 weeks, not do a whole lot or rehab a little bit. Then once the pain goes away or drops enough, or you think I've rested enough, jump right back in at the same intensity that we were at before. Well, what is most likely going to happen if we haven't built back up? A re-injury. Okay. So you can think about the bridge. The only difference here is like with the bridge, when it rests, it doesn't rebuild at all. With our body, when we rest, it gets a little bit stronger, but not a lot. So let's think about this a little bit differently. This is the pain and injury spiral, I call it. So similar to the bridge, right? The stress of ultimate is up here. It might change a little bit here and there, but it's generally similar. Let's say this is your hamstring. Our readiness for or our strength for our hamstring is below the stress of ultimate. What that means is at some point there's going to be breakdown. Maybe it manifests differently, but at some point, let's say there's an injury because there's a big gap between the stress of ultimate and your hamstring strength. Okay. So there's an injury. So our readiness goes way down. And then we rest for a couple weeks. And, it gets a little bit better, a little bit stronger. But what happens is when we don't apply force to specifically train that to be stronger again, we're not directing the healing process. We're just like closing our eyes and like, okay, hopefully this works. And that's when we develop things like scar tissue. So there's a limit to how much it will improve. And then we sort of like plateau out a little bit, right? But what happens here? Look at the gap, the discrepancy between the stress of ultimate, the stress ultimate places on our hamstring and our hamstring strength is even bigger than it was before. So the most likely outcome is another injury or more breakdown over time. Not great, because then our strength drops even further. And if we do the same process of resting and then going back once the pain, subsides enough or we feel good enough, this discrepancy is going to keep getting bigger and bigger. So we can see the problem, hopefully. Um, so this is a huge challenge, and a lot of players that I have worked with and have spoken with deal with cycles of pain and injury, and it can get even worse because this is the hamstring. What about the rest of the body? So let's say this is your quad or your knee or whatever. Let's say that is pretty well prepared to handle the stress of ultimate. However, when we sort of rest and take time off after the first injury, well, this goes down a little bit too. And then the second injury, this goes down a little bit too. Next thing you know, other parts of the body are also becoming deconditioned. So even if with your hamstring, let's say you're really smart with your mobility and strength training, and you're just like really progressively training it so that it builds back up, back up, back up, but you're not paying attention to anything else, well, that is going to decline. So people will return to play. And now it's like, oh crap, I hurt my quad. What the hell? Every time I go back to playing, something goes, right? And this is part of the reason that can happen. So we want to be mindful about how we build back up. So something I think about is like, are you building your bridges back up and building them stronger, or are you letting them crumble into dust? Now, the way we can um, help this happen and help this process, I'm going to tell you. Um, it's with types of mobility training. So, mobility training is more than just easy stretching and warm ups and recovery. A lot of people think of it as, okay, this is just something, it's something you do in warm ups. You foam roll, you stretch for a little bit, you do a little breathing, and that's mobility. That can be a component, and it's not that it's not, somewhat helpful at times, but that does not is not what mobility training does for us. If you've played video games, um, Zelda, I'm a big fan of Zelda. You have a health meter or a heart meter, right? And let's say you have four hearts, um, and you get injured or you get hurt or something, or you fall and like three of your hearts get depleted, and then you eat something or you sit by the fire or whatever, and you fill your hearts back up. Cool, that's great, that's nice. However, what happens if you actually get heart containers and you increase the available health in hearts? This is better than this. What mobility can do when we structure it well, when we progress it well, when we're actually increasing our body's ability to handle force, this is not easy. Hopefully you can see that. Um, we're doing an isometric here. We're doing a hover here, weighted over this disc. When we do these things, we actually increase our body's capacity to handle stress, to handle force. We can take more damage, thought of another way. So mobility training is something that we can add, but it's going to actually give us more ability to do the other stuff, more ability to handle and distribute stress and forces. So we're less likely to have some of those nagging injuries, some of the pain. Okay, so mobility training is very powerful when it's not just the easy, simple stuff that we never actually progress. Okay, so hopefully that makes some sense. Um, Boom. Okay, so again, I believe you can ask questions in the Q&A. Just want to remind you that at any point. All right. So additionally, with better mobility, we learn and improve skills faster and more easily. I want to throw some spooky stuff in here because, Halloween just happened. Um, so when you have poor mobility, and if we're thinking about our joints, like if our joints don't function well, they're stiff, there's pain, they're not moving well, that is kind of like we are trying to navigate a strange, dark house with a very dim flashlight. We have very little awareness of our surroundings. We have a tough time navigating space and coordinating ourselves because we just can't see and have trouble interacting with things. We don't have a complete picture of where we are in space. And this is what happens with our joints. Like our joints speak to our nervous system. So when I move my knee and it doesn't function well, it is giving inaccurate information to my brain about where my body is. And then when my brain goes to tell everything around the knee what to do, it has trouble doing that because it's not getting good information. It's like it's in a dark house without the full picture. Okay. So as we improve mobility and improve joint health, it's kind of like we now have a brighter flashlight. Or if things get really good, it's like we're now in our house, our own house, with the lights on and it's daytime. We just have a much better intuitive understanding of where we are in space. So I don't know if anyone's experienced this, but I certainly have, which is if you have a nagging injury or something, even if it's not severe, like it's painful, you think about it a little bit, but then you're playing and you're like, I don't know why I feel off. Like if you ever just feel off, like you're dropping a disc, you're jumping, it feels awkward, you're cutting, nothing you do really feels that fluid, even though you don't have like a severe injury. This can happen in part because our nervous system just has trouble like subconsciously helping us understand where we are in space. Okay, maybe you stumble over things. And when you start to improve that joint health and mobility, a lot of that starts to get better without even specifically working on it. So that is why effective mobility training starts with building healthier joints. This is one thing that I start with everyone. We start with joint training. So this is just a little visual of what I kind of talked about. Healthy, happy joint, it makes movement much easier. It makes learning so much easier. When we have pain, when we have limitation in our movement, when we don't regularly express full movement, that's when our nervous system is not sure about where we are in space. We might be more protective, which is going to tighten things up. So sometimes you might have, and there are a lot of people that this happens to. You might have hip flexor or hamstring pain or tension. It's always tight. You're rolling it out, you're using a massage gun. It just never lets go, no matter what you do. Sometimes that's a hip problem. Not always, but a lot of times you improve the hip's ability to rotate, to move. You move your hip regularly through large ranges of motion. Maybe you do isometrics, you do cars, which we'll get into later. And sometimes the tissues around the hip that attach around the hip function better, even without training them specifically. And I have absolutely experienced this with my Achilles, with my hamstrings, with my quads. Um, when I started to isolate the joints and go, I'm going to make this hip work better. A lot of the other stuff that I used to spend so much time working on, it just kind of dissolved. Hey, well, a really big one here. If anyone has ever had like tight traps, back behind the neck, behind the shoulder, I used to have like baseballs there, and I would use a stick, I'd use lacrosse balls, I'd use a barbell to like try to get any relief. And when I started regularly doing scapula cars, neck cars, shoulder cars through full ranges of motion with some degree of intensity, that tension went away after years and years of it. And it's not because this is some magical exercise, it's just my joints started functioning better and my nervous system better understood how everything else needed to work. Okay, so it's really powerful stuff, and that is the reason we start with the joints themselves. All right, so little energy drink today just to keep me going. Um, all right, so I want to get into a couple things. There's Mr. Mistake. Couple mistakes related to some training and some mobility training stuff that is going to apply to what we talk about. So, mobility work, like lifting, requires specific effort, intensity, and progression. This is very important. If this woman's goal is to bench press as much weight as possible, but her training consists of lifting 2 pound dumbbells. We have a disconnect, right? That's not ideal. That's not going to get her there. And people understand this. This makes sense when it comes to lifting. Now, there's nothing wrong with the 2 pound weights. If that's challenging at first, you can start there, but then you want to build up to 5 pound weights and to 7 pound weights. And eventually you can lift the bar and then you can start loading things on. And you can add exercises that support the bench press for your triceps and your pecs, etc. The point is, we need specific effort. We need to be using the barbell at some point. We need the right intensity, and then we need to progress. If you lift the 2 pound weights every single day for a year, it is not going to get you closer to maxing out and winning a bench press competition. Okay. The problem is that this behavior is a lot like how people treat mobility type training. So, oh, wrong direction. Wrong direction. Um, so if you want to be able to kick block above your own head and not lose your balance or rip anything, but your training, oh, the picture didn't come up. Okay. But the training consists of a like 30-second hamstring stretch 4 days a week. That's not going to cut it. And I hopefully like when we lay it out that way, that makes sense. But this is what people do. Like my hamstrings are tight, or I pull them, or I want to kick my leg up over my head, but I'm doing a 30-second gentle stretch once per week or once per day. That is not going to cut it. There's not the specific effort, there's not enough intensity, there's no progression. And this is what people do. They'll foam roll, they'll do certain stretches every single day, and doing that is better than not doing anything, 100%. But there needs to be some degree of progression if you expect to make a change. So think about adaptation. We need to have the consistent effort and progression in order to make that happen. Cool? Here's Mr. Mistake again. So here's another big one is that we get stuck when we decide how to train based on our own or others' past experience. So when we it's context is so important. When we look at our own or other people's past experience, we can be really be led astray. And social media does this a lot. So you have a lot of influencers or people who don't have a ton of experience being like, well, this works for me, therefore it works for everyone. But they don't have the experience to back that up, or they're intentionally being misleading. A really big, so too little intensity example is you will see a lot of people who are super fit showing you home workouts with no weight or very minimal weight, just doing body weight exercises, and they're like super jacked. They did not get that way doing like a 20-minute body weight circuit a few times a week. Okay, they got that way lifting heavy and intensely, and then they can maintain that doing that other stuff. So when we look at other people's results or even our own past results, we need to keep context in mind. So when we have a quality that is not well trained, it's very easy to improve it. Okay. If I have never lifted weights before in my life and I start regularly lifting weights, it doesn't really matter what I do. I'm going to build strength and muscle. It just depends how much am I eating and resting to do that. Okay. So if you take someone who's never lifted before and they start lifting, they're going to do something. It does not have to be even close to perfect or smart to make a difference. And I'll tell you a story about this. Um, when I was a high school weight room coach, I told them to do mobility too. So I was the one weight room coach that was like, you should lift less. Um, so we had a guy who was very strong and he was in powerlifting competitions and he'd started lifting really intensely, like 5, 6, 7 days a week. And he put on 20, 30 pounds. He increased his lifts tremendously, built confidence, but his body started breaking down a bit. And I told him from the beginning, like, you really need to have more balance here. But he continued. It was like, yeah, but it's working. It worked. Yeah, it worked when you were 16 and hadn't lifted before, and anything you threw at the wall would work, and you're going through puberty. So, like, that's the best performance enhancing drugs you're going to have in your system, a 16-year-old boy going through puberty. Um, and you're doing way too much, but at this point, it doesn't matter because your body hasn't caught up to that yet. So it's really easy to look at what worked in the past or what worked for someone else without context and think, I'll just do that. So this is important. Same with the too little intensity. I gave you one example with influencers doing home workouts, but another one that happens a lot is like foam rolling or stretching, where like if people don't do any mobility work, and they're like, okay, I'm gonna foam roll my calves. I'm like, oh my gosh, they feel so much better. My ankle mobility is better. Like, this is great. And you might feel better for a few days, but that is not enough of a stimulus to create any type of lasting change. And I know this firsthand because I used to do this and I would like find a different way to roll something out and massage it and it would feel better. I'd be like, oh my gosh, my knee pain went away. I'll just do this and like I'll be perfect. Our nervous system responds to novel stimulus. So something new, it's going to respond to it, and you might feel different temporarily. And it doesn't mean that these things can't be helpful. If you have chronic pain, doing something that gives you even like a little bit of relief temporarily is still valuable. The problem is when we spend more of our time doing the quick fix, like short-term stuff, instead of doing the stuff that is going to give us the long-term relief and results. And this is where I was for years. I'd foam roll, I do other stuff, I do some of these stretches, mobility work that was not effective, and I would do it consistently. And I would do that every day for years without seeing the benefit, other than just like short-term relief. So what can we do? Glad you asked. Controlled articular rotations are a simple way to assess and improve joint rotations. These are CARs. If you heard me talk about CARs before or not, controlled articular rotations, these are big joint rotations. So remember how I talked about we want to prioritize our joints first, then everything else starts to improve from there. Then we can identify other issues. So These are hip cars. I'm holding on to something. We want to be nice and stable when we're doing our cars. My point in making this post was they don't have to be perfect. Our goal is to move just the one joint we're focused on. So watch the first couple reps sped up. I'm letting the rest of my body move. I'm compensating. That's totally cool. All right. That's a cool place to start. We develop some awareness. I would much rather have people start there than try to be perfect and get 0 reps in. Okay. Notice the difference. See how I'm going really slow? I'm not moving as much with the rest of my body. Okay. How about this one? Then we can progress our cars. We can do this with all the joints. I'm squeezing a ball behind my knee. I'm using a weight for my ankle. Okay. So slowing down, adding weight, increasing tension. It's harder. My range of motion looks smaller, but it's just more isolated to that hip. And this is 2.5 times speed. This is very, very challenging. Takes a lot of energy. Okay. So this looks smaller, but notice how little the rest of my body is moving. Whew. All right. And then this is like a planted foot variation. So with cars, there's a lot of nuance. It can be nice and easy joint circle. Um, but then we can do various things, slowing down, adding weight, adding tension to increase the challenge, increase the demand to progress them. Okay. So, oh, wrong way. Look at that. Then we got shoulder cars, right? These are just basic, nice and slow. Notice I'm not turning my chest too much. I'm not moving my head. Got some sped up bird audio there. And then we've got ankle cars. Okay, so same idea. We're isolating it to a single joint. The reason we isolate is so that we can assess and we can move just that joint so we ensure it goes through its full range of motion. If I were to take someone and do cars and let the rest of the body move a lot, once the hip starts getting toward its end range, other parts of the body would move. And you'll notice that with like the ankle. As you do ankle cars, you get towards the end range, that knee and shin and thigh are going to want to move to avoid the end range because it's hard. So isolating it and forcing within reason, not with pain, our joints to go through their full range of motion are a really effective way to both assess and improve joint mobility. And what I recommend, so if you don't have any major glaring priorities for ultimate players, get in the ankle cars, get in the hip cars, get in the shoulder cars, if nothing else, on a daily basis. Doesn't take too long. Cars, super, super helpful and important. Now, so when it comes to assessing, if you do your cars, just hit a lamp over here. So if you do your cars, watch your surroundings. Don't be smacking lamps or people. So cars are a great way to assess. When you go through hip, shoulder, ankle, spine, whatever cars, you want to assess your range of motion. How much range of motion do I have without compensating? Um, do I have pain or instability? Do I notice any of that? We don't want to push through that. So if you notice it, then you just want to cut that painful part out of the rotation. How is my control? That's another thing. Do I feel like I can control it? Do I feel like my coordination is a little off? You might notice from one side to the other, like one shoulder or one hip is much harder to coordinate, even if it's not painful. That's good information. So one thing that I like to do is kind of grade the cars very simply, 1 to 3. And I'll have people do this in the membership. Um, so like just simple stuff. We don't want to make it complicated. 1 being the worst, 3 being the best. If it feels great, awesome. 3. If it feels awful, 1. Somewhere in between, 2. Then you can look at your ones, and those are going to be your primary priorities for now. Okay, so this assessment is very helpful. Now, they're also a simple way, cars, to improve joint mobility to a point. So remember the novel stimulus thing or untrained stuff takes time. Or sorry, untrained stuff doesn't take as much time. You're going to improve more quickly. So think of cars kind of like brushing your teeth and flossing. If you do them regularly, they're basically a maintenance thing. They don't take too much energy. You floss every day, you brush your teeth, twice a day. Awesome. Like you're not going to have too many problems. Genetically, you might still run into issues, obviously. Same with the body and the teeth, right? Like, but we're going to give our best chance to be healthy by flossing, brushing our teeth regularly. Same with cars. If you're relatively healthy and you've been moving a lot and you don't have issues, the cars initially are going to be a maintenance thing. It's just going to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. Nothing gets stuck. You're able to maintain your range of motion and your health. Okay. If you were to go 2 weeks without brushing your teeth or flossing, Well, then we would have some buildup of gunk, of plaque, maybe other crap. We would have terrible breath. Maybe our teeth would feel more sensitive. And what happens then, if you do a couple days of flossing and brushing, you immediately feel better. You just feel better. Your breath is better. Your teeth look better, right? So very quick improvement from this maintenance. And that's how cars can be. If you're not used to moving through full ranges and you have a lot of joint dysfunction and pain, doing cars for the first week or two you might feel significantly better. And that is amazing. And you should continue doing that. However, this is then it started becomes more of a maintenance thing where in order to progress, if you're not where you want to be, then you would do things like increasing the intensity of the cars. Maybe you would push through your end ranges a little more. You would do things like isometrics, which we will get into shortly. So hopefully that makes sense. Where cars are a wonderful tool and where I start people, but this is just scratching the surface. Cool? Cool. All right. So this is where we get into isometrics. And with isometrics, this is how we produce force more specifically. So this allows us to more specifically and precisely train certain areas. So if the cars are not sufficient, if the brushing the teeth is not sufficient, maybe we need to see the dentist. Maybe we need to, keep put our retainer in more. Maybe we need braces, right? The isometrics are like the braces, okay? So almost literally, like the braces kind of are an isometric where it's just applying force constantly. So isometrics can help us do a number of things: improve joint and tendon health, improve our range of motion, improve strength. And all of these are food, which is fun, right? So we're going to get into all of these things. I'm going to take a quick sip. All right. Um, let's pause this for a second. So these are incredibly powerful. Isometrics are something that has been an absolute game changer in addition to the cars for me and my clients. They can really effectively reduce pain and inflammation while also improving tendon and connective tissue health. And when I'm talking about connective tissue, it's basically the stuff that is not muscle and bone. Everything's connective tissue, but for this purpose, the tendons and the ligaments, the health of that is improved significantly by doing isometrics compared to doing things like traditional strength training or running or jumping. So when we were doing the isometrics, there's something called that a researcher named Keith Barr, Barr. You can look him up. He has some great stuff and some good podcasts too. He's called stress shielding. So that's why I have this little shield here in front of this squatting apple. It's a sentence I never thought I would say. So stress shielding is basically when you stress the tendon with a stretch with force with an isometric. So here, I have a stretch here and I'm pushing my foot down. So it is putting tension through my Achilles, which I am then holding. Okay. When we do that for the first few seconds, what happens is the strongest parts of the tendon are engaged and challenged, and the weakest are not. Over time, as you hold it, the stronger parts fatigue, and then we get to train the weaker parts. So by holding a longer isometric, 10, 20, 30 seconds, we actually train not just the strongest, but also the weakest parts of the tendon. And isometrics preferentially train tendons more than the muscles. So they really help with improving joint and tendon health. So if we're doing regular strength training and lifting, great, like that's going to do something, but it's not going to challenge the tendons to the same degree for as long. So we're not strengthening the weakest areas. When we're running and jumping, same idea. Like we're improving maybe the stiffness of our tendon, but not necessarily the tendon health or the tendon strength. So when we fatigue in game 3 or game 7 of the weekend, and we end up with a tendon issue because the stronger areas have been fatigued and the weaker areas haven't gotten any stimulus because we never actually trained them, that could have been preventable, right? So that's what we're after. So to explain this a little more, so I sped this up, but this time is consistent with the time in the video. So I'm doing isometrics in different positions here. I'm pushing down through the ball of my foot to create tension, and then I'm holding. And the way I recommend doing isometrics, especially just for general connective tissue health, anti-inflammation, is find a stretch. If you have pain or discomfort, go to a smaller range of motion, less stretch. Start low stretch, build up to higher stretch. Start low stretch, Start gradually pushing, like 10% of your maximal effort, and slowly build up. For general health, anti-inflammation, I recommend like 30 to 60% of your maximal effort. So slowly build up to the effort you want to be at, and then hold for 10 to 30 seconds. The harder you're pushing, the less time you're going to do it, just like with lifting, right? The harder you're going, the less volume. And then you're going to slowly relax. The reason I like that is because the tendons, when there is jerk, when there's a change, a quick change in how hard it's going or how much it's stretched, that's called jerk. That can cause pain and inflammation if your tendon is not super healthy. So we want slow buildup and slow relaxation. Another reason I like to do that is it gives us an opportunity to assess how things are feeling. So one side to the other. How easily can you control the buildup of tension? How easily can you ramp it back down when you're done? This is all good information. If you can't do that well, practicing isometrics not only improves your joint and tendon health, it also can improve your ability to control and release tension in your body. Super helpful. Okay, so here's another example for the knees. I love this one. This is one that I've had knee issues, Achilles issues. So I did some version of these every single day for like the last 2 years. And it's the reason I was able to play 7 tournaments this year, or a big reason. So we're getting a stretch through the quads and through the patellar tendon. So these areas are being stretched, and then I'm pushing my feet down while pulling with my hands so I can create a ton of tension and challenge through here. And then we hold, this is sped up, a hold for 10 to 20 seconds. You can change your foot position. So, with any of the isometrics, the goal here is not the specific position. It's more about what is comfortable for you, what helps you engage the tissues that you want to engage, the areas that you want to be challenged. That's what we want. So, I knew that I get pain in my knee, my patellar tendon, my quad tendons get tight and don't feel good. And that is tends to be what most limits me. So, I worked on that every single day at low to moderate intensity. All right. All right, cool. So, very powerful stuff. Now, another thing we can do with isometrics, we can use them to increase range of motion and strength. So, assuming you're relatively healthy, then we can go at maximal efforts. And when it comes to percentage of effort, with practice, you will start to figure out how hard you can go. Another reason you want to build up slow is that when you build up slower, typically you can actually reach a higher intensity. Okay. And you give yourself time to reach that intensity. So let's say I want to improve my groin mobility, my ability to pry my legs out. I would drive my thighs into my arms here using my groin muscles. Okay, so I'm building up, driving, 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 driving. And then after about 10 seconds of maximal effort, I would relax, see if I can just gradually open a little bit more. Okay. Another form that we use is pale and rail. So I don't need to get into that exactly, but the idea is it's two isometrics going opposite directions. So I'm starting with that push in with my legs. So the stretched part is working hard to kind of close, right? And after I do that, instead of relaxing, I am then going to use my outer hips to pry open. It's essentially an isometric too, because I'm going the other direction, but I'm going to hit my end range and pull against it. So this is a very effective way to increase our range of motion and our strength within that range. So we're doing it really actively, providing a lot of force to help create the adaptation. All right, then of course you can do the same thing in a different position. Find what works best for you. Now, this is my client TJ doing hamstring isometrics. So I talked about kicking your leg up, right? So if you're kicking your leg up, you want to be able to kick block up here. Stretching for 30 seconds, not effective. What you can do, stretch for a minute or two. If you're like, I need more range of motion in my leg, here's what you do. You find a hamstring stretch. You can do it laying down, you can do it standing up. With TJ, we're doing it standing up and we have a stretch. So we stretch for a couple minutes. Then I put the camera on. Then good spot. All right, we're going to start to dig it in, build up, get to 60, 70, 80, 90. So he is digging. Whoops, Cracker Jacks. I blew it. All right. Max it out. He's maxing out his effort. Ignore that for a second. Lock in. So max effort driving down, using all of these muscles. Then he's going to reverse it and try to lift his leg. Three, two, one, pull. Really, really, really hard effort. Hold, 3, 2. So this is a really strong guy working maximally. This is significantly harder than doing a really heavy deadlift. If you go through this, it will wreck you in a good way. Okay. So this is a really important way to build strength and increase range of motion. This is another thing we can do with isometrics. Now, someone commented on a post of mine about doing single leg squat isometric, where you sink down low into like a really challenging position for your quad, for your knee, for your ankle, and you hold for 20, 30 seconds. You can add weight to strengthen that position, strengthen your tendons, and help you be stronger in a position that most people ignore or try to avoid. This guy tried to comment about it. He said, or you could just squat and do the same movement as you do in the game, or do Bulgarians. So back leg elevated split squat. This is a common misconception, okay, that you can just lift and get strong and it will take care of everything. And I'm telling you that is absolutely not the case. If you're here, you may have experienced that too. So just lifting is not enough to improve our end ranges of motion. It's not enough to improve our joint health and our tendon health. It's not enough to increase our strength within large ranges. Okay. So this is a common mistake. Here's Mr. Mistake. Now, I will get to something I do agree with what this guy says. All right. So there's Mr. Mistake again. This is related. Lifting doesn't train full ranges or weakest positions with enough time or focus. So a big belief that a lot of people have is that if you just lift heavy, if you just get stronger, if you just lift through full range of motion, you will improve mobility, you'll improve flexibility, and your joints and tendons will be sufficiently strong. That is not the case. Lifting is an important component of training, but lifting itself is not the answer to everything. So a lot of people think this, like I thought this was funny too. This is me a few years ago. So, lifting does not, a couple things. I get very passionate about this one. Lifting does not prepare us for the specific ranges of motion where we take on a lot of stress in ultimate. So this is me playing self-fetch like a Looney Tune. Shoulder flexion, hip abduction. Look how much my hips have to open up to keep me balanced. And then watch that left ankle. Doing a squat through full range of motion is not going to prepare my ankle for that, right? Doing a squat or a lunge or a deadlift in full range of motion is not going to prepare my foot or my ankle for that. Doing a bench press is not going to prepare my shoulders for that or my shoulder. Oh, crack. For this. So it's important that we specifically train the mobility, the rotation of our joints, extreme ranges of motion with things like cars and isometrics, because we're going to end up there and we don't want our body to be unprepared. So I had a couple notes that I didn't want to forget. So another thing with lifting is that it doesn't make you equally strong everywhere. If I do a back squat or a deadlift through full range of motion, it's not like I'm putting my whole body through full range. First off, most people never get this low and they don't spend time down here smiling like I do. But even so, I'm not going through full hip internal or external rotation. I'm not rotating my ankles. Okay. I'm not going through everything I need to with my knees. Additionally, people get so focused on the lift that they're not thinking as much about what the lift does for them. It's not about the lift. It's not about the squat or the deadlift. It's about how that creates an adaptation in your body to help you on the field. So, a quick story, there was an offensive lineman I worked with in high school, and he went on to play for Army the next year. And when I came in, he'd been doing a lot of powerlifting, like real, heavy stuff. He could squat probably close to 400 pounds. He was a really big kid and really strong, but not everywhere he needed to be. He could back squat, again, almost 400 pounds. And I had him start doing, after I came in, changed the program, had him start doing pause squats at the bottom. So pause for 3 seconds at the absolute depth of the squat, like this. It wasn't that low, but like that. And he could do that with about 135 pounds for 3 reps, and it crushed him. Crushed him. So he's like a third as strong at the bottom as at the top, but people avoid that range. They bounce out of it, they get in and out of it as quickly as possible because they're thinking about how to maximize the squat, not about maximizing what the squat does for them. I try to make my lifts hard so that I get the biggest benefit out of them. And then there's a gap between what lifting does and then what we need to do on the field. And that's where mobility training comes in. Another thing is, like, if your goal is to be lifting super heavy, cool. You still want to work on improving your joint and tendon health and improving your mobility so you can more easily get into the lift. So another big point is that when it comes to like just lift heavy through full range and you'll improve your mobility where you need it, lifting back squat, power cleans, front squat, deadlift, bench, whatever. These are not natural movements. These are movements that we made up, that humans created, not based on our natural movement patterns, just based on like what people wanted to do. There were lifting competitions, powerlifting competitions like the squat or like the um, snatch, power clean, clean and jerk, that stuff. Because of that, things like back squats and front squats and deadlifts became popular because they were a means to get better at powerlifting, not because they were a means to get better at being a human or an athlete. So people were like, these big, strong, powerful athletes do these lifts. We should do them. And that's how they all became popularized. So that's a little bit of a rant. But the point is that, like, these lifts are not anything magical or special. It's just a way that we can lift heavyweight. So there's a lot of room for how we use them, but we need specific time and focus and progression on our joints and our tendons, focusing on them rather than focusing on the lift and assuming that will do everything for us. It would be very convenient, much more easy, but that's just not the case. And if it was the case, there wouldn't be so many people dealing with injuries and unhealthy because a lot of people really love lifting. And unfortunately, lifting doesn't always love them back. Though it is, when it's designed well, it is important and helpful. Okay, so speaking of lifting, we want to train for the specific demands of ultimate, not other sports. Mr. Mistake here. This is a big mistake people make. And it's related to what I was just talking about. So people will put a disproportionate amount of training energy into things that don't matter as much. This is Hafthor Bjornsson. He is the world record deadlift holder. At least he was. I think he still is. Um, Ooh, awesome. I see we got a question about isometrics. We'll get into that. Um, I'll get into some of the questions towards the end. So, his sport and his competition is lifting, is deadlifting. So, it makes sense for the majority of his training to be deadlifting practice and deadlifting related. That makes sense, right? Because that is his competition. Our sport and our competition is lifting, frisbee, right? Cutting, jumping, running, throwing. So it does not make sense for us to put anywhere close to the resources and time and energy into deadlifting or other lifts as someone like him does, or as a power lifter does, or as a bodybuilder does, because that is not our sport. So when a power lifter practices lifts, they are not only training for their sport, they are practicing their sport at the same time. And that's why they can spend so much time in the gym and have it still be effective. When we are lifting, we are training to improve areas that will help us in our sport, but it's not sport practice. So it does not make sense to spend so much time and energy in the gym, especially when for a lot of people it actually reduces our readiness for some other like playing related stuff. So this is important. Um, where's my notes? Boom. Yeah. Now, that being said, there's a balance here. We don't want all of our training in the gym to mimic exactly what we do on the field, right? In the gym, we train to improve qualities that help us prepare for our skills in practice, right? So I might deadlift. I might do bent over rows, single leg deadlift, whatever, to improve my lower body strength, my ability to produce force. And I can take that ability and that muscle and use it to practice being fast. I still need the practice, but I'm not going to like hold light weights and sprint with it or hold like half of my deadlift and like we the gym is for the gym, the field is for training. I'm going to improve my hip mobility, my hip rotation, my hip. This is abduction, opening the hip up. That might help me with my pivoting. That might help me with stepping out and throwing and overall hip health. But I'm not going to hold a 50-pound weight and try to throw while stepping out with that. It doesn't make any sense when we're practicing our skills, which includes throwing, but also jumping, cutting, etc. We want that to be practice. We want to be able to practice in a way that makes sense. If we try to combine the two of them, we're not going to get the strength gains that we want because we don't have the right intensity or focus. And we're not going to get the skill gains that we want because we're not actually practicing the skill. We're doing some weird thing in between. Okay, so this guy, when he said you could just squat and then do the same movement as you do in the game, there is some truth to that, right? He misunderstood what I was doing, which was improving joint health and improving a specific position that we need. But yes, we want to do our gym training and then we want to do our practice. And our training in the gym is going to help us get better with our practice. But this is something that we need to remember with our training because what people will do, which I've already said, I'll try not to repeat it too much, will break their body down in the gym. And then they're not able to practice as well. They're not able to practice their skills as much. It's like, oh, I can't sprint today. I destroyed my legs in my leg day. It's like, well, maybe don't do that because doing 10 sets of deadlift is not as important as you getting a little bit faster, right? So yeah, this is something we really want to keep in mind. That's why I'm talking about it so much. Okay. Yeah, I think that was the main thing. So practicing is really important. We're going to practice our skills. I'll get more into that later too. Now, where do we fit mobility training in? And how can we add it without losing gains? All right, I'm almost through the lecture portion of this, and then we'll get into some more fun stuff. Um, so I wanted to highlight a few of my clients here, and stuff that they do and that you can do as well to fit mobility training in and reinforce that you are not going to lose your gains by prioritizing mobility. I promise you, this is a big issue that people have. They're like, well, if I spend less time in the gym and more time on mobility, I'm going to lose my gains. Well, you saw TJ. This is my client. He played pro basketball in Europe. He was a team in Greece, very elite level basketball player, starting point guard, won a championship. Um, and you saw him training with me doing max effort isometrics for his hip. Do you think he's going to lose gains by doing that? Absolutely not. When TJ trained with me during one of his off seasons, he would work with me 4 to 6 times per week, and we primarily did cars, isometrics, and different versions of like high intensity, high tension hovers. So a lot of really high intensity mobility work using a band, a light dumbbell, a stick, maybe a tennis ball, and that was it. And he gained muscle doing that, despite being someone who had been lifting and playing competitive sports at the elite level his entire life. You will not lose your gains if you structure this properly, and you will feel better. This is my other client, friend of mine, a client for about 5+ years now. Jacob Smith just won a national championship with Revolver. So I'm super pumped for him. And he's someone who has done a mobility training session with me once a week with a group of people um, for like 5 years, every single week. So he, despite having the demands of travel for Ultimate, of playing, of practicing for an elite level team year in and year out, he's found the time to have at least one mobility training session per week and then add in his priorities elsewhere. Then we have Alex Atkins. So 2022, he won a national championship with Bravo. I started working with him that after that off season, doing lifting, doing mobility stuff. I've since done some in-person stuff with him, and I am not responsible in any way for any of these people's success. But the point is, they can compete and continue competing at a high level with greater sustainability because they have adopted this stuff. And so Alex incorporates the mobility into his warm-ups, into his cooldowns. Okay. TJ combines lifts with isometrics. We have him on doing supersets that's similar to some of my programs where he might do a bench press and then a hard, intense shoulder isometric. So you can incorporate the mobility work, cars and isometrics, into your lifts, supersetting a lift with cars, a lift with isometrics. You can do 1 or 2 focused mobility days per week, like Jacob does. Okay, this is really, really important. You are not going to lose your gains, and there are ways you can incorporate this into your routine. A simple 10-minute morning routine of cars, focusing specifically on the joints you most need, is also a very effective way to incorporate them. All right. Powerful stuff. Let me see if I missed anything there. Any other tips? Yeah, warm-ups and cooldowns. So if you think about every time you go to the field, if you add in some cars and maybe an isometric for one of your problem areas, like that's 4 minutes every time you go to the field to do a workout, throwing, conditioning, speed, whatever all year round. You're accumulating a significant amount of mobility work, barely changing anything, barely adding much. And you can do that every time you go to the gym. You just do like a few reps of cars for something and some isometrics. The nice part is the more you do that, the easier it becomes to do. And you don't have to think about it so much. So you can start by just incorporating some of that into stuff you're already doing. All right. Another big mistake. Here's Mr. Mistake. People get very rigid with lifting form and programming. Lifting form and programming is not rigid. It's not one size fits all. Okay, so I think that's Muggsy Bogues and Patrick Ewing. These two guys, if they were going to lift this barbell, they would do it very differently. You'd have Muggsy going in there, and he would probably look a little bit like me. Nice hinge, not too much knee bend, maybe a little bit. If you have Patrick go in and try to lift this off the ground, you can't be like, "Hey man, don't bend your knees so much." There's no other way for him to get that off the floor. Or maybe you use risers. So this is an extreme example, but people get very rigid or worried about different lifting form. How am I supposed to do this? How am I supposed to do that? Safety is important, but there are so many different ways we can do things, and it depends on who you are, what your goals are, where you are in the season. Um, excuse me, and your own preferences. So one of the things that I do for people is like in some of my programming, which I'll show you, I might give them the option of doing a certain type of deadlift or a certain type of squat or substituting a squat or a deadlift depending on what they feel best with. Because ultimately, it's not about the one exercise being a magical exercise. It's about what the exercise does for us. So I would rather have you do something you can be consistent with and feel good with than try to force an exercise on you that like just doesn't really work for you. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. So when I think about lifting and programming, so another thing like with reps, lifting, the lifting part of the program is the least important because it's the least specific to what we do. With mobility, we want to be focused. It's going to depend on our priorities and our movement abilities. With lifting, if you're doing stuff that generally feels good, you're challenging yourself, awesome. It does not have to be super specific. So I like to think about like lifting and programming in general, more like cooking than baking. With baking, we need everything measured out exactly, right? If we want the bread to rise or the cake to rise and everything, the proportions have to be just right. We do not need that with lifting. Okay. The one thing I will tell people is like the mistakes people make is they spend too much time learning a certain lift because they think they need it, or there's too much volume and intensity. So as long as you're not spending a disproportionate amount of time, there's not too much volume and intensity. If you're challenging your upper body, your lower body, good portion of your body with lifting without breaking your body down, that's awesome. Okay. Yes, we can get more specific with it, but I would rather people not overthink this too much. All right. Cool, cool. So let me see if yeah. So another quick thing about this is that when I wouldn't want someone spending too much time practicing lifts. So this is something that grinds my gears. When people are practicing, people love Olympic lifts, right? Because this is what powerful athletes do. This is how you develop speed and power. There's so many different ways to do it. You could do jumps. You could do jumps with small weights. You could do a snatch with dumbbells instead of with a barbell. But I have seen this where people will spend months practicing a snatch or practicing a power clean, not even using much weight. They're just spending so much time practicing and they're not getting the benefit out of it because they're just practicing. And at that point, it's like just focus on doing something powerful. You could do a light power deadlift. Again, you could do jumping, you can do other stuff. But if you're spending more time practicing that than practicing some of your skills for your sport, that's a problem. That's not the priority. So we want to make sure we're putting the practice in where it matters with our sport. We want to be good enough at a lift that we can do it safely. And if it takes a long time, pick something else. All right. Cool. Cool, 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 cool. Another thing, there's no one perfect or essential lift. There just isn't. Anyone that tells you like there's one perfect exercise, one perfect lift you have to be doing, there is not. There are so many different ways to do it. They're professional athletes doing lifts that look terrible, but they feel great. They're playing great. They're healthy. That's what matters. You can use a machine. That's totally fine. You can use dumbbells, barbells, whatever works for you and your body. The key is we're challenging ourselves sustainably. Okay, so this is a client of mine, Christian Parsons. He is playing with Team Canada, Grandmasters team, and World Beach Ultimate Championships soon. And he talked about he thanked me for getting him to cut back his strength sessions in the last training block. So another point I wanted to make with the lifting, and this is exactly what I told Christian, which is if you have been lifting consistently and you have a good base of strength, and especially if you're coming up to something where you want to be fresh, like a competition, a World Beach Ultimate Tournament, um, you can probably bump back your lifting volume and intensity like 40%. Like go 60% of what you've been doing, be consistent, and you're really not going to lose the gains. If you're still practicing, you're running, you're jumping, you're sprinting, doing your sport stuff, you're not going to lose much. And that's exactly what he found, which is on the field, he felt just as good, except fresher because he wasn't spending the energy with the lifting. And when he got back into the gym to try it out, he didn't feel like he had lost much. If you do take time off going really hard in the gym, your performance in the lift might be lower for like a week or two, right? So if you're training just to deadlift, yeah, you might be weaker for a week or two, but you didn't get weaker. Your performance on the field or sand is probably going to improve because you have more resources to recover. Your nervous system isn't as challenged. All right, another mistake. Here's Mr. Mistake again, popping up. Speed, agility, and conditioning are different qualities and must be trained differently. So this is a another huge issue that I see, which is that people don't take enough rest with speed, and there's not enough focus with conditioning. Um, they're not the same thing. It's they're different qualities. One is yes, we want to work with high intensity and be able to manage fatigue, and another one is absolute maximal power output, speed output. So if I am working on speed, I want to be able to have every rep, assuming once I'm warmed up, I want to be fresh and warmed up. I want to go max effort and then recover enough that I can go max effort again. And if you look at really elite athletes, and if they have a trainer that knows what they're doing, there's not going to be a ton of volume. There's not going to be a ton of distance with the sprinting, and they're going to take enough rest that they can have a similar, if not better, output. So maybe they're timing their 20 or timing their 40. And if the time goes down for like 2 reps in a row, session over. If your output starts to drop, session over. You might not have the ability to time it perfectly, or as reliably, and that's okay. And if you're not as used to training speed and power, there might be more uh, volatility in your time. You might not be as consistent right now, and that's okay. But just think again, it's cooking, not baking, right? It doesn't have to be perfect, but if you notice you're getting fatigued or you're just not feeling as fresh, it's probably time to cut the session when we're talking about speed and power. Okay. If you're working on changing direction, if you're working on speed, these are qualities that we need to train at full speed. Eventually, you don't have to be at full speed right away, but you want to get there. And if you are significantly fatigued, you can't effectively improve skills that you haven't built up yet. If you are already very fast, you're already great at changing direction, you're already a great thrower, awesome. Then you can work on expressing those abilities under fatigue, which is what I see conditioning as. If you are not as fast as you would like to be, if you have trouble changing direction and need to work on it, if you want to improve your throws overall, you're best served working on those things while you are fresh and focused. When fatigue starts to pop up, it becomes harder to improve those skills. So these are two different things that we want to work on. So biggest problem I see is people just blending speed, agility, and conditioning together and just always kind of being tired and always grinding. Right? We don't want that because you're not going to improve your speed. Now, this gets back to expectations. It gets back to context. Because you have not consciously trained with sprints, or jumping or agility in a while, or not done it before, when you start to be consistent with it, even if you don't have nearly enough rest, you will make improvements short term. Because if it's undertrained, you will see improvements even if you're not doing anything nearly ideal. But they'll be short lived, it'll be superficial, and then at some point you'll just sort of plateau. right? Because if you're fatigued, like you will notice a difference if you go out and do sprints and you take 6 minutes between 20 yard, 40-yard sprints, 30 or 40-yard sprints. I did this with Alex Atkins. I set a timer. We were doing it with him and another guy on Pac-Man, and it's a lot. So we were like throwing and chilling in between reps, but we noticed a difference. It's like you might actually be more sore because you're able to be at a speed that you're not used to getting to because you're so used to being hamstrung or handicapped by fatigue. Okay. And you might feel ready, but neurologically, your body may not be ready to go 100% after a couple minutes. If you look at elite level sprinters, they're going to take really long periods of time between max effort sprints. So we don't need to go to an extreme because we're not sprinters. But if you do want to improve your speed, improve your agility, improve other skills, we need to be working on them when we are fresh. All right, I'll try not to hit too much on this, but I will say one more thing. Another point with conditioning is I think when some people are working on conditioning, so working on maybe change of direction, running, pushing through that fatigue, pushing through the burn, right? I do want people to take a little bit more rest initially, and then over the course of the off season or season, then cut down the rest. Because what sometimes happens is people are still not moving at high enough intensity, so they get so fatigued that they're moving at like 70% speed. And then they get used to doing that, and then when they're in a game and they have to go 100% a lot, their body isn't as used to it. So I look at conditioning as you're intending to go as fast as you are during your speed sessions. You just can't quite do it because of the fatigue. And it just sucks more because of the fatigue, but you're still able to get close to 80, 90% of your output. Okay. And I believe that's much more effective conditioning than just kind of going through the motions because you're so fatigued. You like can barely do what you're used to. All right. Here we are. Let's talk about scheduling, structuring your off-season program. A lot of people are familiar with the high-low approach, which is basically that we're going to alternate high and low intensity days. Okay, or if not alternate, we're not going to have high intensity days back to back, and we're going to stack high intensity things on one day, so that then we can have a low intensity day. Okay, so I might do a sprint session and a lift on one day, and then just do like a chill walk the next day, something like that. Okay. And this is a good way to structure it. It's a good way to think about it, but there is nuance. So high and low is relative depending on the person and the athlete. It's not always clear cut. So you might have some days that's like, is that a high day? Is that a low day? I'm not really sure. Different things, there's no black and white here. Different things affect people differently. So for one thing, if you're an experienced lifter and you do really heavy like lifting day, that is going to probably affect you more than an inexperienced lifter. If you take someone maxing out their deadlift, but they've only been lifting for a few weeks, they're not actually going to be able to use as much of what they have, so they're not going to be quite as fatigued. Okay. So additionally, I think about sometimes for me, a high day might be high impact day, even if it's not super tiring. So if I'm doing a jump session and I'm staying relatively low volume, high intensity, lots of rest, I might not even feel tired after that. Ideally, after a good jump session, it's like sprinting, high rest, low volume, high intensity. You tend to feel like you have a lot more in the tank, but it's a lot of impact on my joints and my tendons. So I probably won't do a high impact the next day. So you can differentiate between high impact versus high intensity. But the idea is we don't really want to stack high impact, high intensity days next to each other. Okay. Let me see if I missed anything with that. I think that was pretty good. Yeah. So here's an example using some of the notation that I use for like what might be kind of a full week in the off season. So the body maintenance days, this is something that is basically like full body cars and some active stretching. So it's not super intense, something you can probably do in 10 to 15 minutes once you know what everything is. You can do that on any day. So this is going to be part of like a low intensity day. So then you might do a high intensity day the next day. So a lift and a conditioning session, right? So I might get out to the field, do some conditioning, do some lifting. You can order that however you want. There are people who like to get the lift in first, people who like to get the field session in first. It really depends on what works for you. what works for you and what works for your schedule, honestly. I was just talking about to someone about this when it comes to speed, because in theory, people are like, well, you should do the speed session before you're fatigued. So you should do it earlier in the day than you lift, either right before you lift or in the morning, then you lift in the evening. Really, like whatever makes the most sense for you. If you find that when you do the speed session second, you just don't feel very good, then don't do it second or have it on its own day. There's a lot of room for variability depending on your schedule. If you have access to a facility, in or outside where you have turf and then you also have a gym right there, I love doing a field session and then follow it up right into a lift. That's great, but a lot of people don't have that ability. So when you see a lot of training programs for athletes, you see them in these facilities where they have turf or a field connected with a gym. That's great, but that's not something everyone has available to them. Then we have the like mobility master. And so this is where we do things in the program like isometrics, other higher intensity type of movements for mobility. So this is something that if it's not combined with another high intensity thing, I still keep it on a low day because it's just not going to create quite the same level of fatigue. So you can work really hard, you can do isometrics really hard, but you're generally not going to feel as fatigued or as sore the next day, and it reduces inflammation rather than lifting, which increases inflammation. And by the way, lifting increases inflammation by design, like that's part of it, and that's okay. It's just that it's going to take more time to recover. We might be more sore. All right, then we can same deal. If you have league, a lot of people have like fall, winter, spring league. What I like to do with that is stack that with the speed and acceleration day. So you might do some sprints, some speed and acceleration work in your warm up for league. That's a really nice way to get that in. And then maybe you do a lift and mobility master. And maybe what I like to do is like maybe lift two, maybe one of your lifts is not as intense as the others. So that can still kind of be a little bit more of a low day. So you can do that after a high day. Okay. So this could be how it looks if you're pretty full. Now we're going to go through like a more moderate example. So moderate, um, we still have the body maintenance. We're still doing that 3 times, right? We're still doing mobility master twice, but then 2 lifts. So this is something I think is more sustainable for a lot of people, which is having like 1 to 2 lifts per week. You're getting 1 to 2 field sessions per week with the conditioning, with the speed and acceleration, and then maybe you have a league day. And if you don't have a league that you're playing, then you could either do like another field session or you could do another lift if you wanted to. And I know it doesn't always work perfectly where you have league like directly in between 2 days where you can lift. So you can play around with it. You could get a lift right before league or earlier in the day. Um, Again, it really depends on your specific schedule. All right, and this would be more of a minimal thing where you could still stack the high intensity. So if you're like, hey, I can get out to the field once per week, cool. Hit your speed acceleration, and then hit the league. So you're doing that field day in one day, you're doing a lift another day. So you really only have to get to the gym 2 days a week. You're hitting body maintenance, you're doing a mobility master. So I always prioritize body maintenance and mobility master. We want to get those in because that is what is, remember, going to increase our heart meter. That is going to increase our resilience and our ability to handle stress and take damage. Okay, so we want this no matter what. If I can only do one thing, it's going to be the mobility. Another option for something like conditioning would be doing some form of tempo runs. Um, so something where you're like doing lower intensity sprint work with more rest. Let me see if any of this is. I see question Q&A. Okay, so perfect timing. Marek, sorry if I've mispronounced your name. Marek, would you treat conditioning? Um, yes. So would you treat conditioning as low intensity day, for example, tempo runs? Um, so yes. So you can absolutely do that. So tempo runs can be a low intensity day, as I'm talking about here. So something that's where you may do, say you're going like 70% of your maximal speed for 50 to 100 yards, taking enough rest that you're not being super maxed out, like your breath is not too heavy, you're not going to be exhausted. I like to do this with a long deceleration. So it reduces the stress on the joints because a lot of times the quick stop and deceleration can increase the stress. So yes, tempos are a great option for a low day. That being said, it depends on the person because sometimes just running is enough that like if you've done something high intensity the day before, it doesn't feel awesome. So as you get older, or if you have ankle, Achilles, knee stuff going on, any type of running might feel like a little bit too much, but it really depends on the person. Another option you could do is do some sort of like bike intervals on an assault bike or a spin bike, something like that, or a bicycle outside, which would allow you to get some cardio work in, but it's not like pounding high impact. Yeah, great question. All right, so this would be more of a minimal. So hopefully this makes sense. Again, there's so much room for flexibility, and I'm going to talk more about that. So a written program is static, but human sports and seasons are dynamic. This is a screenshot from an in-season program. Um, so a written program, right? You can't change it. Um, and you don't have to follow everything to a T to get the benefits. Everyone is different. Weeks are going to be different. Seasons are going to be different. And different things work for different people. So for example, like I want to present this in a way that works for the most amount of people, but I want anyone on here to recognize that it's more about the principles than anything else. So like, if you're following the principles that I'm talking about, that's why I like to teach the principles first. That is going to help you. So, what is my goal in my training? What do I want to get out of it? What am I really training for? How much time and energy do I have to spend on this? Those are all going to help dictate what you do. So, um, different volumes, different intensities can work for different people. Like I talked about with high impact stuff, that when you're 20, you might be able to do high impact a few times a week. Maybe when you're in your 30s or 40s, it's going to be a little bit tougher. Additionally, you might have days where you have less time than you thought you would. Rather than doing nothing, you can do something. And sometimes when people have, and that seems like obvious, but sometimes when people have in their mind, like they get a little too perfectionistic and they're like, this is the thing, I have to do it. But then they don't have time, so they just don't do anything. You're much better off doing a little bit, even if it's not exactly part of the plan, than trying to do everything and and then just not doing it. Okay. So yes, we want to be mindful that even if you have a written program and even if it's designed exactly for you, um, life is not perfect. Life is not going to listen. You are not everyone else, and you are not who you were 2 months ago. So we have to take everything into context. All right, so here's a screenshot of the spreadsheet for off-season strength one, phase one. So in the strength program, I have 3 strength workouts, and I just wanted to share this as an example here. What I talked about, like my client TJ, what we have him do. And this is what I have people in my program do, where we're doing a lift and we're doing isometrics. We're doing a lift, we're doing an isometric superset. So throughout the course of the session, we're not adding a ton of extra time, but we're accumulating a good amount of isometric work, which is great for our joints and tendons. Additionally, sometimes that can improve the connection with us and our body, right? It can improve how things feel. It can help us put more into the lift itself. You'll also notice, so this is early on, we have a 3-3-3 tempo. Go down for 3 seconds, hold for 3 seconds, up for three. I really like that early on in the off season because if you're true to that tempo, you are going to pause, which is good for the joints and tendons. Because you're going slow, it is going to limit the amount of weight that you can lift. And I like that early on as we get our body back accustomed to doing lifting more often, slow it down so that you can't make it too much about how much you lift. When you're doing that tempo, it's not about maxing out the lift. You have to focus more about what's going on with your body, which is the whole point. Um, you'll also notice here, I have options, goblet squat or back squat, dumbbell, kettlebell, bent over row. So I always encourage people, as I talked about before, to use an exercise that works for you in your training. All right. That's ultimately the goal is like we want upper body stuff, we want core stuff, we want leg stuff that is going to allow us to produce a lot of force safely and keep us healthy. All right. Let me see. Is that mainly what I had? Yeah, so when it comes to like adjusting your programming, let me go back to this for a second. Um, some of the big suggestions I have is in your body maintenance workout or in your mobility master workout, in the mobility work that you're doing on a weekly basis, hopefully more than weekly, um, you are adding extra stuff for your priority areas. So if you do your cars, you check them out, um, spend more time on the areas you find either don't feel as good now or where you have had issues in the past. So I've talked about how I did isometrics for my Achilles and my knees daily. And I did higher intensity ones 1 to 2 times a week in my gym sessions. And that is something that really helped me throughout the season stay strong and avoid a lot of the pain and issues that I've had in the past. And it wasn't luck. It wasn't some like wow, this somehow worked. It wasn't, yeah, it was just consistent effort that I thought about ahead of time. Like, what are the things that I need to be doing regularly? So these are ways that you can adjust your program. Whatever programming you're following, start adding in things for your specific priorities. And remember that just the lifting, just basic foam rolling and stretching, like that's not enough. We need to spend time and energy at those specific areas. All right, so I wanted to go through this one. So let me click on this. That's going to take me here. I'm going to stop the share real quick. And we're going to go into boom, share there, continue to external site. Oh, I already had it open. Anyway, so this is in the Ultimate Mobility membership that I have. So I made this last year, last January, but I think it's really helpful. So I thought it'd be good to talk about how you can adjust for winter and cold because a lot of people are in places where it gets cold in the winter. It gets hard to do some of the speed and conditioning work. So, a couple big things. If you're going outside, start inside. If it's really cold, put on your coat and sweatpants. Do a 5 to 15 minute workout inside. You can do any type of warm up, get yourself moving. You start to get your heart rate up, you get your body heat up while you're in a warm environment. And then you go outside and you're already warm. So sometimes people will go outside, then they'll try to warm up. And it's much harder to do that if you're not warm already. Okay, so this is a really good way to do that. Another thing, let go of ideal. You're probably, if it's cold out, snowy, whatever, you're probably not going to be able to do exactly what you want to do in your program, in your training, if you're outside and it's cold. That's okay. Like, get yourself moving in some way that approximates what you would like to do in your training. You might have to get creative. So, one way to do that is if you're inside, use similar work rest intervals and intensity. So, you could do 10-second max effort on an assault bike or a stationary bike or a rower. So it's not perfect, but you're using your body for maximal effort, fast movement for a similar amount of time, and then take a similar amount of rest to what you did in the program. Max effort banded knees. Conditioning, you could do treadmill sprints, you could do bike sprints, sled pushes. For change of direction work, you can do different types of planting drills inside. If you have 5 to 10 yards to work with, you could do side shuffles, you could do little mini shuttle runs. So it's not going to be as fun. It's not going to be as interesting. It might suck, but it's going to be better than if you didn't do anything. If you're just inside lifting all winter, it's going to be really tough to get back out to playing, and there's going to be a big gap between your readiness and where you need to be. Another big point, be opportunistic. So I know in Philly last year, there were a couple really warm days, and then there was some snow. I actually got out to the same field, and one day it was like 60 and sunny, and one day it was full with snow. So be opportunistic and make the most out of like those opportunities you have. And then have fun. What can you do? Like I did this one. Maybe some of you have seen this before. That didn't show you. Let's turn that off. But this was me in the snow last winter. All right, I'm not going to go through the whole video, but I was doing self-fetch. I was laying out. I was like, this is a fun opportunity to lay out in the snow, right? So make the most of it. Have fun. There you go. Fun stuff. I'll stop the share there, and then we'll go back to the presentation. All right, so that is a little bit I wanted to address with the winter training, winter speed and conditioning. Okay, I think it's important to acknowledge like this is a reality for a lot of people, and we want to have things in place that we can do. I think it's helpful to think what you have available to you and what you could do ahead of time, so that it doesn't end up being a point where it starts to get cold, or then there's snow out, and you're like, ah, what should I do? All right, we want to try to avoid with the program. We want to try to avoid having to make decisions in the moment because then it's going to be harder. We don't want to spend that mental energy. We want to have things laid out. If this, then that. If this, then that. If I can't use this field, I'm going to do this. So you already have it decided. We don't want to have to make a decision every single day. Okay. And related to that, when it comes to how you structure your off-season training, it's really helpful to establish a schedule. So for those of you in my program, some of you are in my programs. Um, I don't specify exactly what you should do every day. Um, but I expect that you will do that to some degree. So it's helpful to lay it out, understanding that like, hey, there's going to be differences, right? Like I talked about how I had uh, my wife had our daughter last November. She's almost one. She's almost one in like 4 days. Um, so things changed for me. Like I wasn't able to follow a whole lot of a plan, but I had to be opportunistic when I could. So, but it helps to lay out a schedule. Once you have it laid out and structured, then you can more intelligently make adjustments. Okay, but if you have nothing laid out, if you have nothing planned whatsoever, and it's just like I'm going to do one of these things one of these days, it's not that you can't make progress, it's just you're going to waste energy. And I want you to make the most out of your physical and mental energy. All right. So now, ultimate mobility free stuff. You made it to this point. We're going to do the Q&A in a minute. I just wanted to thank you for being here, for taking this time. Um, I've got about a half an hour for the Q&A, so I can take plenty of time. What I wanted to share with you is, I know this is paused here for a second. Some of you might have this already, but this is the Ultimate Mobility um, Training Ball. Why is this not? All right. So let me go to the chat, share this with you. Boom. Aha. All right. So that has a bunch of really good resources, a ton of resources organized for you. So I was hoping that that would help. And I also have a sample training program. And let me put that in the chat as well. And if you have any questions that you've thought of, you can ask them now. You can type them in there. So this is a sample training program. This is more for the off season, but the body maintenance and mobility master are fairly similar. So if you have not seen that, that's a great thing that you can check out. And then I also wanted to offer a complimentary 25-minute consult with anyone who is on this call. Um, so that I'm going to put the link in the chat to that as well. All right. So boom, boom. So you can schedule that for any time in the next week or two. Um, if for some reason there's an issue there, you can let me know. You could send an email back. But this should allow you to schedule a free consultation. I think it says to see if you're a good fit for a program. For those of you on here today, whether you're in a program, if you're not interested at all, totally cool. I'm happy to have a chat with you and just give you an ear. Oh, Travis, I saw you raised your hand. Do you have a question? I see. Oh, Will says I'm unable to see anything in the chat. Hmm. Is anyone else not seeing stuff in the chat? Yeah. Hmm. Okay. Thank you. What is going on? What is going on here? All right. Let me see. What is going on? I don't know why. Let me see. Do. Aha. Okay. There we go. All right. Boom. Thank you. So this is the link to schedule complimentary session. So you can save this link if you would like. Um, and then I have this link is to the is it not? All right. Well, of course there are going to be some technical difficulties here. Okay, sample program. Let me go back there. Boom, chat, everyone. There we go. There's the sample program. All right, we're in business. We're in business here. Um, and going on here? Ooh, nice. We got some Q&A. Unable to see. All right, cool, cool, cool. Thank you all for for your feedback there. Oh yeah, the training vault. Let me go to that. Continue. Boom, boom. And we are here. So you should all be getting that. Here's the training vault, Google Doc. All right, so all that is stuff. I appreciate you all being here. Um, I hope that is helpful. I do have a free community. I don't know if any of you are in that as well, but I have a free Ultimate Mobility community. Um, and so this is another thing. This is actually not right. So I, but what is going to happen? So I have my Ultimate Mobility membership. It is actually currently at $29 a month or 244 for the year. So this is my lowest cost thing that I know is very valuable and has been helping people out. Um, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to establish some tiers soon. So the lowest tier will be 29, and then we'll have a higher tier and then like a VIP tier. The thing is that in the next few days, once the tiers are set, some of the features will be taken out of the $29 a month. And this isn't like a marketing thing. This is just like the way it's working. So the people who are currently in the program um will be grandfathered in to all the benefits that like you have when you sign up. So basically if you sign up in the next realistically probably like week or so, um I could say 2 days, but that's not accurate. If if you sign up in what am I doing here? Probably the next week, you'll just be locked into like the benefits. Like that's the main benefit is that you'll be locked into like there's certain courses in there, and there are like live calls and stuff that you may not have access to once the tiers are in place. So good time to join. There's a little bit of a incentive to do it now, and we have all kinds of different stuff in there where you'll be able to learn about mobility and training. So fun stuff. And final thing, so I have a UM Pro, and then we'll get to the Q&A. I have a UM Pro off-season program where you get the programs like I've talked about, but on an app. So the app seems to be really effective. People really seem to like it. I tested this out with some of my oh man, that some of my clients and they seem to really like that. So, yeah, the app has been really effective. This is something where you get a one-on-one hour-long consultation. We talk about your priorities. You get the recording of it. You get the training app, and actually for the next couple days, like until Tuesday, you save $200 or about $50 per month. And so this is the last couple days I'm offering this discount, and it's only the link that I am about to share with you. Um, and there we go. I don't know why this keeps happening. Let me do that. All right. So I have this and boom, boom. Where did it go? All right. And then we're going to do the Q&A in just a second. I just want to get you this link here. So if you are interested in this, if you're not, I know a few of you on here I think are already in it, which is exciting. But if you are interested, then this is so again by Tuesday. This link will expire Tuesday. So if you're interested, you can join that. It'll be $149 a month for 4 months, where you'll get extra customization, extra support compared to if you were in the membership. Both are great options. The one is just going to be higher level support, plus the one-on-one consultation, and the training app. So the training app is pretty fun. Awesome. Okay, so oh, free consultation link doesn't seem to work. Well, well, well. Um, I will get to that in just a second. So Kate asks, will the complimentary session sign up be live after the call? When I click it now, it says sign up to not live. Okay. Let me check that. I don't know why that happened. I literally tested this like right before I came on here. So let me check this real quick for you guys. If you have any other questions related to either offers or training in general, um, that would be wonderful. Let me click on that. Let me see. Click, select and continue. All right, that works. So let me see if this was just an issue on my end with the link. I'm going to share another link. Boom. See if let me see. I'm going to click that too. Ah, weird. It's very weird. All right, let me try this. I don't understand what is going on here. Because when I look it up on my browser, it works, and then when I click what I pasted for all of you, it doesn't work. That's the same thing, isn't it? Oh wait, try that link that I just shared another link. I think that'll work. I don't know what is going on. This is so weird. Um, this is better than last time. So last time I did the webinar, it didn't record. So all right, success. Awesome. So if you want to schedule a complimentary session, uh, go ahead and click on that. Like I said, I'm happy to chat about stuff that you're that is going on with you, things that you would like to improve. I'm happy to chat about if you're interested in some of the programs, but that is not essential. You do not have to be interested in order to join a call. I just want to provide a thank you to everyone um, for being here and for being a part of this. And then let's get into a question here. So Aaron asked, do you approach isometrics differently for different sized muscles and muscle groups? Amazing. Aaron's been in my membership for a while. Absolutely love the commitment. So do I let's see. So for different muscle groups, different size muscle groups, yes, I do. And it's similar to like lifts where the overall level of stress that you're imparting on the body is not going to be quite the same. However, neurologically, it is different that if I'm doing like a wrist or an ankle isometric versus a hamstring isometric or a hip internal rotation isometric. So the version I showed with my client TJ, where he is like max effort hamstring isometric, right? That is something that we're gonna do one, maybe two reps, and then gonna chill on that for a couple days. Um, so I might do like big muscle groups, especially like the hips, max effort reps twice a week, if that's a priority. Things like the Achilles, it's going to be less stress overall for your body doing a smaller body part. It's going to be less neurologically demanding. So you can do that a few times a week. But again, it does depend on just how much stress you have in general. So like for me and for the Achilles, for example, if I'm in season, I'm probably not going to want a ton of really high intensity Achilles isos because I'm going to be running and jumping and playing, but I might still do it 1 to 2 times a week, and then I'll do low intensity elsewise. Hopefully that makes sense. That's a great question. I love like thinking about the principles. So that's really what you want to think about. Like if you are well trained and you're doing a low body or full body lift with high intensity, it's going to relatively impart a bigger stress on your body. You'll need more to recover from it. You won't do that as frequently. Same with the isometrics. It's just if I want to really grind and I go hard with the isometric, I'm going to be less likely to run into trouble if I try to do that every day than I lift heavy every day. That makes sense. Yeah. Awesome question. Awesome question. Anybody else have any questions or any thoughts, anything at all, any feedback? I like to think about this stuff as you may have noticed with like metaphors and imagery. That's just what makes sense to me. Um, and I think that's if you don't have questions, totally cool, not an expectation, but let me see. As I look through here, a quick little summary of what we talked about. I want people to think about what is your real goal with your training? What are your main priorities with your training? And I also want like no matter your goals, make mobility a big part of your training. It does not have to take over, but it should be a significant component of your training. Um, And then we use our other training that's not mobility to get ourselves more out of our practice and play. So we always want to have that in the front of our mind that the goal of our other training is not to grind us down to dust. It's to help us get more out of the important skill work and practice. Let's see. Ooh, so Kate asks, at this point in your career, do you have books you love related to ultimate and or lifting slash body work? Ooh, that's a great question. So, there is a book I really liked from it was Pavel and Dan John called Easy Strength. And they're primarily strength coaches. So it's not like, their main priority is like getting people to improve their lifts. But the point of it was really about how you can use lower intensity consistently to improve a lot of different things because you become more efficient with it. And so that really helped me understand that like you don't need to grind all the time to maintain or even make gains. So easy strength. I really like that one. Um, I don't know why I'm blanking right now. So, um, in terms of resources, Andreo Spina, and functional range conditioning or functional anatomy seminars. I'll put this in. I'll type this in here. Um, one of my mentors, really really smart. You can find a podcast um, on of his on like Spotify and on YouTube. Really really smart guy. And he's created the system that popularized cars, and he kind of coined the term. So yeah, just in terms of resources. I lately a lot of what I read is fiction because I spent so much time just like consuming nothing but stuff for work, though I do love it, that I had to just like shift. Otherwise, like literally 100% of my time is just work. Um, but I do love it. Um, I'll have to think about other books. That's a great question, Kate. So, okay, so Marek. Again, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it. What do you think about different duration ISOs, 3 to 5 second and 30 to 45 second, and when to use them? Amazing. Great questions. So here's what I think about it. I think there's a time and place for a lot of different durations. What I would start with is longer duration. And then over time, assuming you're healthy and you feel good, you can put in some shorter duration, more intense. So if you have an area that is sore, inflamed, not feeling awesome, and you're like, I really want to improve like my tendon health and reduce inflammation, that's when I'd really recommend doing low to moderate intensity, 30 to 45 second isometrics. So 3 to 4 sets of 20 to 30 seconds is really great for that, or even 45 seconds. But again, do things that you're really willing to do. That's why I usually say 20 to 30 seconds, 3 to 4 sets, so people have a range. Um, and that will really help with the inflammation. That can help with pain as well. And Keith Barr did some research where they found, I think it was the patellar tendon, when there were literally like seemed to be holes in the tendon and it was really degraded. 60 days of, I believe they did like 4 sets of 30-second isometrics for 60 days, and they found significant changes that the tendon actually was being like rebuilt, basically. So I don't think you need that volume to see a change, but something close to that is helpful. Yeah, but you like there is so much that we can do with our training. We don't have full control over anything, but there's so much we can do to make improvements. And I'm telling you, like I try not to just focus on my changes because I know from my experience how important it is to consider everyone's context and how so many people use themselves as a reason their system works. But I will share with you that, like, in past seasons, I've had so much issue with my Achilles and my knee that I just couldn't handle like 2 to 3 tournaments. This year, 38, the oldest I've ever been. Like that line. Um, I was able to play 7 tournaments and I felt my best playing at regionals in the seventh tournament of the year, despite for like 6 months of the year getting very, very little sleep. And it's because of the mobility work and the isometrics. So, little tangent there, but 3 to 5 second ISOs. So once you're relatively healthy and you want to start like building up the reactivity and the stiffness, that's where doing like a shorter duration isometric can be nice. So hamstring stretch, Achilles stretch, push down hard for 3 to 5 seconds. And that's a nice way to increase your rate of force production. So increase your ability to produce force more quickly. I also will use ballistic isometrics where you're really quick, boom, boom, like literally 1 to 2 seconds, build up as high as you can in that short amount of time. And that's another nice way to build up some like not plyometric, but like it will help with plyometrics, but it doesn't have the same impact as jumping and running. But you just want to be mindful that when you're doing that, it's going to be more stress, it's going to be more strain on the tendons. So you want to build up to that ability. So great question. 30 to 45 seconds, awesome for general health, pain, inflammation. 10 to 15 seconds is great for like strength and increasing range of motion. But I think about that as that is the duration of of the intensity that you want. So if I'm trying to increase range of motion and my goal is to be working at 100% of my intensity, okay? And I take 10 seconds to build up to 100%, that's when the isometric starts. It started down here, I know, but I count it here. So I build up to 100%, I hold 100% for 10 seconds, and that is my 10-second isometric. Versus the shorter duration, it's like we want to get to here, and it's like boom, boom. Yeah. So those are great for warm-ups too, the shorter duration isometrics. And then of course, like you have the isometrics where rather than pushing into an immovable surface, um, you're holding a squat, right? And holding that position for 3 to 5 seconds. So if you're doing an isometric with a lift, that's also when you'd probably do a lower duration. All right, Teresa, great stuff. If you have an imbalance, strength mobility wise, for example, one injured shoulder, do you approach the exercises any differently, or should you focus always just being on max range of motion, etc., per joint at that time? Any ways to measure or gauge progress? Great question. So, if you have an imbalance, yeah, my thought is like, for example, with lifting, um, try to do whatever you can without pain. And if it doesn't look the same as the other shoulder or the other hip or whatever it is, that's okay. Um, do what you can without pain or any significant compensation. When it comes to the mobility stuff, so like if I'm doing shoulder cars, um, it's I am pushing through whatever range I can, again, without pain. So a lot of times people like out here doesn't feel good if we're talking about the shoulder specifically. So what you do is, all right, I'll go as far as I can where it feels good. And then I'm going to just like cut this part out of the circle. And then I'm going to do the rest. And then I'll do the same thing over time, sometimes our nervous system starts to adapt, and over time, we might be able to make a bigger circle without pain. Another thing you could do is change your positioning. So I could lay down on my side, so gravity is acting differently, and I might be able to get into a little bit of a different range there with my shoulder. Um, and something I didn't specifically talk about, but I think is very important, is the proportion of painful to pain-free or difficult to easier movement we do. So if you do have pain and you can't totally avoid it, we don't want to reinforce to our nervous system that this is painful. So rather than like not moving something, and then whenever you do move it, it hurts. I like to think about, can I bring up the proportion of pain-free to painful movement? So if I get a lot of painful movement, okay, can I start adding, if this is inevitable, it's going to inevitably be in pain. Okay. Can I bump up the amount of pain-free movement, even if it's small, even if it's like a smaller, it's like just reinforce that I can move this without pain. And sometimes that will change our perspective on pain. Sometimes it'll change our nervous system's reactivity and things will start to feel better. So um, hopefully that helps. It's not always helpful to go max range of motion. Um, and in terms of measuring and gauging progress, so when it comes to mobility, doing things like the cars is helpful. I mean, that's a really good measure of progress because that's like your output. Like it's a visual of your joint health. If you can do a big range of motion without compensating through your head, your neck, your chest, etc., or You can do your hip without moving through other parts of your body. That's a great way to measure the progress. So what I would recommend is filming yourself, and you don't have to share it with anybody. You can if you'd like, but you don't have to. Film yourself, maybe from a couple angles. Like what the easiest way to do it is like you set up on, prop your phone up or use a tripod and face it straight on and do a car or two, and then turn to your side and do a car or two, and then look at that later, and compare it to a week from now, 2 weeks from now, etc. And that can help. So that's where like the cars themselves can be really good for both assessing and improving the range of motion. So another thing, and I didn't get into this specifically, but with our hips and our shoulders, especially, and our ankles, rotation is very, very important for the health. So, um, internal and external rotation. So this is internal, this is external. Okay, so you can lie down or you can lay on a table with your arm along against the side so you can rotate it. Internal, external rotation, and kind of see how far you rotate each way. And you can set up a camera to view it. You can check out the other one. M More often than not, if you have an issue with a shoulder or a hip, if one side does not feel as good, very often it's going to be limited in rotation. More often than not, internal rotation, but that's not always the case. Okay, so didn't think I was going to do this on a webinar, but like if I go back here, right? This is internal, this is external rotation. Internal, external. So you can lie down with your legs up. You can sit on something with your legs hanging off. Um, but just generally doing some assessments there can really help both the cars as well as breaking it down into internal and external. Yeah, so hopefully that helps. And so another point that I wanted to make with that, let me quickly grab that, is that our joint health and mobility can decline without us realizing it. So as you go throughout a season or an off season, if you're doing a lot of other training, but you're not specifically addressing your mobility, it can start to degrade without us noticing. So doing like body maintenance, doing our cars regularly, helps us so that things don't fall through the cracks. So if you do not do any cars, any mobility work, but you're lifting intensely, you're going out, you're playing, most likely those mobility markers are going to get worse by the end of the season or by the end of the off season. So if you were to assess your internal and external rotation, you were to assess all of your cars, and then you don't do any of that stuff for several months while playing and training other things, our body is going to adapt to the other training we're doing, but we need to be regularly training the mobility. And people don't think this because they just never do it, so they don't really realize. Like I've worked with clients who like didn't do a whole lot for a few weeks, and then they get back to it and they're like, "Oh my gosh, like I didn't realize, like until I did this, I did not realize that, things had gotten tighter." So a lot of times we don't realize because we don't put ourselves in this position. If you do a lot of squatting and a lot of lunging and a lot of that stuff, and you continue to do that, you'll continue to be able to do that, but you might not notice about the other things, the other ways your body is kind of like tightening up. Yeah. So that is very important because when we start to like our body is efficient. It's going to expend resources only when needed. And if I never tell my body that I want to be out here, um, it's it's not going to keep that ability alive. Like maybe it will, but I won't have strength there. So with our training, it's very specific. We get good at the things we do, and the things we don't do go away. Move it or lose it is real. If you do not do certain things, like the amount of I worked with a lot of middle-aged people earlier in my career, and I was doing like 55 in-person training sessions per week. And a lot of people injure their shoulder reaching back in the car to get something or to like feed their kid or to take a toy from or like give something to their kid, right? Because they never do this. And then they don't do it for years. And then suddenly they have a 3-year-old in the backseat of the car or however old is appropriate. And they injure themselves because they have like they're trying to produce 2 pounds of force in this weird position. I had a friend who like he would reach back for the disc, like if it was behind him, and like just the pressure of the disc would like pop his shoulder a little bit. And that's because like he didn't never went in that position or strengthened it, so it doesn't take much to get injured. So I'm rambling a little bit with this, but it is really important that we are regularly assessing and training the stuff. If you're I've worked with some high schoolers and shown them cars, and I'm like, just do these every day, you'll be fine. And it's really not that hard. I acknowledge that changing habits is not easy. It's not, even if it's something that seems simple, it's not easy. And it's not easy to change your paradigm and how you think about training. But this stuff can relatively simply, not always easy, relatively simply, without expending a lot of extra energy, improve how you feel, how you function, for the long term. So, yeah. All right. Well, any other thoughts or questions, anybody? Happy to answer them. I appreciate you all being here. And I will send a recording out. Looks like this recorded, which is wonderful. Cool. Well, um, Kate, you are so welcome. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Um, yeah, everybody, I appreciate it. I do have lots of stuff on YouTube, lots of stuff on Instagram, which is maybe how some of you found me. Um, if there's any stuff that you found particularly helpful or other stuff that you'd like me to cover in the future, just let me know and via email or DM or whatever, and we'll make it happen. All right. All right, friends. Thanks again for being here. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of the week. Well, I guess it's Sunday. Hope you have a great week coming up. All right, take care.